So I wanted to talk about, because Fran triggered this off. Fran started this. This is her part she plays. The idea of entering into the now in this world, right? Because communication comes from God to man, it's not the other way around. We communicate with God through prayer, which is an ascending idea of communication. But all of our prayer is already known by God, because God is omnipresent and knows all things, including that which is within the dream, but does not know of the dream. Right? God knows his son perfectly, including that he sleeps. The idea then of being able to access now, like in present memory, everything that I need to navigate my experience in the world divinely or with grace, is something that I can tap into whenever I want. Right? It doesn't have to become a struggle. It doesn't have to become something that I have to labor over. When I give my life to God, everything becomes simple. Everything becomes easy, and all the difficulties just kind of fall away. Everything that would ordinarily make life awkward and difficult, which is me trying to work it out, right, falls away, and I simply find myself in the doing of what it is that I'm about as my own divine expression, even on earth. And that doesn't matter whether it's verbose or whether it's something completely artistic, or it doesn't matter at all what that expression looks like. Right? And I remember a beautiful video. I don't remember the name of it, but we watched many, many years ago, just drawing on a past reference for this one, but we watched this video of this fellow. It was a movie made of a true story, right, of this guy that taught himself to play the piano. And he had no lessons. He found an old piano, fixed it somehow or something, or was given a piano. I can't remember the story. But he just sat down and decided that he could play it. He didn't know how to play it. He'd never had a lesson, never played the piano before. And he just sat down, and within a few minutes, he was playing the most beautiful piano. Like, it just flowed from him. He opened his mind to the possibility that all knowledge inherent throughout the entirety of the human association on earth was the same thing as the knowledge of the kingdom of heaven. There's many stories of people as healers, and like Mary Baker Eddy, for example, and people like that who just automatically fall into the vocation of their divine ministry without even knowing anything about it at all. We've got a course in miracles. We've got 365 lessons and like a massive amount of text and Bible and everything. And we have the advantage, or I don't even know if you would really call it an advantage, but we have the ability to study and to prepare ourselves for the revelatory nature of our purpose, or the revelatory nature of our inner direction. And in a sense, it is a preparation, but it's like when Jesus says, no one can look upon the face of God without some preparation. And there are Hindu scriptures to that regard as well, that it takes some kind of preparation to be able to look upon the face of God or enter into the Godhead without getting fried. I remember the story of, it's a fictional story of the Ark of the Covenant with, what's that guy, Harrison Ford, the character he plays, Indiana Jones, and the Nazis open the Ark of the Covenant, and out comes the benevolence of God, and they look at it with open eyes, and it destroys them. It completely just obliterates them, because they're not prepared to, to receive the magnitude of the glory of what's inside. They can't withstand it. Their bodies are made as a defense against it, and I think their bodies disintegrate. And Harrison Ford advises his fellow adventurers, don't look. And they all fall to their knees and avert their eyes and stuff like that. So, but that total power, that total grace is something that it's not that you can't look at it or you can't embrace it or you can't receive it. I mean, it's one of the gifts of God. I think Jesus talks about it as the last gift of God. But you have to have some preparation to receive it, some purification. And learning to trust, learning to accept your oneness with all things is on earth as above, so below, is part and parcel of that. It's the whole thing. There is nothing to question. There are no questions. There's no need for references. There's no need for lessons. There's no need for anything. If I could simply enter into a state of pure acceptance of my holiness and extend that automatically to everyone and everything, all living creatures and all living things, that state of grace would be mine instantly, because that's what brings it about. The altruistic vision, or the vision of Christ, or Krishna consciousness, whatever you prefer to you know. Incrementally, however, we seem to have this deprogramming or this unlearning process that we go through, where day by day we're looking at how we think, we're looking at the way we're using our mind and seeing where it is that it doesn't serve us and seeing where it is that we can make changes. Right? The most obvious places those things can be seen, those opportunities can be seen, is in the cycles of our repetitive behaviors, our habits of thought. All habits are habits of thought. Whatever gets played out through the body is an action in the mind. Everything is mind. They're the most obvious opportunities where I'm triggered again and again, or I see the same thing that I'm doing again and again. And then when I cross-reference that, Fran, in the true sense, when I cross-reference that with higher curriculum, not with another temporal association that I have, but when I cross-reference that with a higher curriculum, my what would you call it? My higher learning, or that learning which of me requires faith, right? Then change can occur. When I cross-reference it with my own learning, of which no faith is required for the understanding of, then no change occurs. All I'm doing is validating lower order authority, which is no authority at all. So I'm always taking the situations that I seem to be realizing are opportunities for faith and for growth. Growth isn't a good word, but for change. I'm always taking those to be referenced from a higher perspective. I want to give that to the Holy Spirit, who sees ultimately the highest perspective there is for me and can translate that for me in a way that I can even understand here on earth. Does that make sense? So it's like my job is not to work it out for myself, but to give it to the Holy Spirit, who has already, in a sense, worked it out for me as my higher guide and knows how it is that I can receive the understanding of that so that it becomes immediately useful to me here. Because if you can't recognize it here, what's the point? Even the miracle, of which we can't really even talk, people say to me, oh, that was a miracle and this was a miracle, and then describe how the miracle was. That's not a miracle. If you can describe it, it's not a miracle. I've had miracles and I don't know how they happened. All I know is that they were a miracle. I had cancer 1 minute and then within 10 seconds, I had no cancer. How did that happen? Freaking miracle. I can't say it happened because of this or that. It happened because somewhere in my mind, I deferred all my thinking about it to a higher authority who translated it to me in a way that I could understand. The only way I could understand it was that it was miraculous. It was of God. And that's the purpose of the communication of the Holy Spirit, is to constantly be aligning my mind to the realization that all true communication is of God, thus giving me a new reference point for communication. Here on the lower level where we operate, it's like we talk, we use our words and our symbols to try and project and understand ideas that we're sharing, which are higher ideas. But the sharing of those ideas is not to remain in a greater spiritual eloquence of those ideas on the framework on this level. It's to redirect us constantly, again and again and again, upward, upward, upward to our higher authority, which is God, who has the final say on everything and is everything. So it's like your simple and honest question this morning, is that like this, or is that similar to that, or whatever? It's like, that's like one of the most beautiful and amazing kind of opportunities to teach from that ever shows up, because that is the human condition, constantly looking for a reference point here on earth, when in actual fact, the teaching of the Course is, stop looking for reference points on earth, because all you're going to find is the same old thing. Right? Your past thoughts don't mean anything. So I walk the world not without my past references, but in the recognition that they cannot serve me anymore. And I come to that recognition again and again and again. And every time I'm brought back to it, my awareness of it, because the ego always wants to dumb me down, right? That my awareness of it becomes stronger. I become more powerful in my determination not to use those past references. It's like, no, I'm done with that. It's like someone trying to give up smoking or alcohol. It's like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't. And they may have to say that to themselves many times before finally they actually hear themselves say it. Right? Which is why in the mantra style meditations that we're going to be entering into in a couple of weeks with those last lessons, we're repeating again that same idea, learning through repetition. I'm whole and perfect. I'm whole and perfect. I'm whole and perfect, until I hear myself say it. Right? All teaching, all talking, seen rightly, is an action of presenting myself with an opportunity to hear what it is that I'm about, which is why I'm always grateful to you guys. It's like giving me this forum to show up and hear myself in my determination to accept atonement for myself, you know, finger on my nose. And that's how it has to be for everybody who walks the singular path. You get to a point where you realize there's nobody else. You know, and then you can either get stuck there as a sticking point, or you can sort of mature up a little bit and realize, all right, there is nobody else. But for a second, I'm going to join with the illusion of other people and other else's and other things to help me bring about a more consolidated effort in bringing my mind to that final point of conclusion, that final point of, what would you call it? Solidarity with the idea of my perfection, I guess. You know, we support each other. We go to God together along the way, not as individuals, but as one mind awakening. The appearance of individuals is something that we're going to have all the way. So there's no point in becoming spiritually aloof about things and sort of, oh, there's nobody else. You know, I have people say that to me all the time. And I realize in it, you know, it's like, I remember when I was at that place, I used to get stuck at that place and it's a defense, you know, it's a defense mechanism. But the idea of entering into grace is something that I don't have a say in it. My say begins and ends with the acceptance of atonement. That's it. Grace automatically flows when that, and you have glimpses of it. I used to see it in TED sometimes. Most of the times I would see this kind of blustering, overweight, this is the story that I would develop, blustering, overweight New Yorker who was overly sure of himself and had this loud personality that would just like ram down the room, completely certain of God's purpose in his life. And was like, man, that was one of my biggest obstacles to forgiveness. It's like most people, when they think of a spiritual teacher, think of somebody who's quietly spoken and quite humble and everything else. And Ted was the exact opposite of that. He was like some big energy. I know, Tina, right? I know. She's laughing. I know why you're like, I know. But it's like that's the thing, and like I look at Jesus, when I read the Course, and I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but when I read the Course and some of the things that Jesus says, and it's like my prior ideas, prior to coming to the Course, my prior perception of Jesus, because everybody's always on about, oh, Jesus healed everybody and was kind and patient and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and eternally loving and everything. My version of Jesus is through the Course is that like he's this big kind of energy. He's just like, get over yourself, like an AA sponsor or something. He's like you're doing this to yourself, and like snap out of it, boom, 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 slap, slap, and probably not quite like that. But I remember at a point, when Jesus spoke to me and he said, Ted was doing this talk and I was sitting against the wall and Ted was talking about, you guys don't ask for enough, you need to ask for more, ask for everything. You're entitled to it. You're children of God, for Christ's sake, ask for everything. And I'd already had revelation. I'm thinking, well, what would I ask for? So I just said to Jesus, I closed my eyes and I said to Jesus in my thinking, I'm like, Jesus, I want more. And I just heard him speak back to me in this big sort of like, don't be an idiot voice, like, what more can you possibly want? Like, it just really nailed me to the, what more could you possibly want? And I said to him kind of diminutively, it's like, I don't know, and he said, well, just sit back, relax and enjoy the ride. And it was really, he really, really held me to account on it. Like just by the way he spoke, there wasn't like, now there, poor David, like, let's explain this to you. It's just like, nah, boom. Just do what I tell you, for God's sake. Just sit down, shut up, and don't interfere. It's a funny thing. That's how we are, like I think when I was a little boy in the dream, when my brother and I, we were the same. And it's like, it's much like brothers in salvation. We're just the same old bunch of knuckleheads, trying to get along and work things out and have this sort of meeting place where previously we've used our past references to determine the nature of our relationship with each other. And now we're using a reference that has no past in it at all to determine that relationship by applying forgiveness to everything else that doesn't represent the truth, doesn't represent that eternal relationship to us. And it kind of becomes this game amongst brothers, where we just sort of laugh at each other and have a good time. And there's a lot of backslapping and like, oh, you missed that one. You missed that opportunity. And, Tina fell off her bicycle. It's funny. It's funny. The whole thing's funny. But you've kind of got to reach that point where you just see that doing it to yourself, like, oh, secret of salvation is I'm doing this to myself, where you see that doing it to yourself is actually funny. It's like, I thought I could be separate from God. It's like, oh my God, how crazy am I? How funny is that? You know, am I insane? If God is everything, how could I be separate from everything? You know, and you look at that paradox, you sort of find yourself there trying to examine how you could somehow be separate from everything, as if that's not you being somehow separate from everything, examining it. It's like that is what the idea of being separate from everything is. It's like, I'm doing it again. Rather than simply saying yes to the now. I think it was Ramana Maharshi who said that no one can stay in the perfect sense of I am for very long each day. You have to set aside time, and Jesus talks about it in the same way. He says, set aside some time each day to spend with your Father. And you'll find that in the doing of that, it automatically, it's like watering a plant. It just kind of automatically grows there in the background. You don't think about it until the next time you go around to water it, and then you realize how much it's grown. It's like, oh, it's grown a bit since last time I was here watering this plant. You know, the rest of the day when you're not watering that plant, you're out and about worrying about stuff or falling off your bike or doing whatever you need to do until you come around to water the plant again. And then every time you water the plant and you go through that prayerful act of meditation, which is what it is, the two things kind of become intermeshed and combined. The prayer and the meditation become one thing. Prayer-itation, is that a word? Prayer-imitation. We'll just add that in there. And you realize the benefit. You start to realize how much benefit your efforts have been to you because your prayer becomes more fluid and your meditation becomes easier. You seem to be able to spend more and more time in silent listening, more and more time in the peace that lays at the edge of consciousness and between consciousness, let's say, and the higher reaches of your mind, to a point where you begin to get a sense of the subtle frequencies that prevail there. You start to feel pulled. You start to feel drawn in a sense. And I've had, and it was this way for me as well. I felt like I was being sucked down the plug hole. When you're a little child and your mother pulls the plug out and you scramble to get out of the bath because you don't want to go down the plug hole, that's exactly how it feels. Jesus talks about that moment in the Course as a tiny moment of terror where you cross the threshold between this world and the next. But in meditation, that's exactly how it is. But we tend to, or I should keep this singular, but I tend to sit at the veil. I tend to sit on the edge rather than allow myself to be drawn in, because the automatic tendency of the mind, of the ego mind, which is what residual spiritual mind is, if you want to look at it that way, is to defend yourself against it, right up until you can't do that anymore. So sometimes when you meditate, and I had Rosie say this to me once, that she was meditating for an hour and suddenly she got an incredible feeling of terror. She felt like she was going to disappear or going to, and I've had many people actually say this to me, they felt like they're going to cease to exist, or they were going to enter into a blackness or into nothingness. Right? That's good. That's what you want. Rosie recoiled from it. She thought she'd been doing something wrong in her meditation. And I don't know whether she actually heard me when I tried to counsel her to the opposite of that, saying, no, that's a good thing. You may not be ready for it. It takes some preparation to look upon the face of God. But beyond that moment of terror, that's what's there, the face of God. On the other side of the veil, on the other side of consciousness, right, where this world gives way to the next, that's all that there is. There is only truth. It's only consciousness that hides that from you. And it will be able to continue to hide it from you whilst you continue to listen to its counsel. You've got to refuse to listen to that voice, Fran, that voice that's looking for temporal association. There is nothing to compare to the now. And ultimately, every opportunity or every interaction is an opportunity to enter into the now. It doesn't matter what's being presented. Would you like to go fishing today? That's an opportunity to enter into the now. It's not about fishing. It's being presented to you in a way you can understand and relate to as an idea or as a symbol. Everything comes in symbols. Every moment, God calls to his Son unceasingly, every single moment throughout the day. And Jesus asks us to simply practice with these lessons for a few minutes a day, to hear that call and to answer it in silent listening. Here I am, Lord. Speak to me. Teach me. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? Etc., etc. Learning to listen to our own internal guidance, our own inner spirit, as a constancy of practice, as a living practice, is something that takes practice. It's something that takes a lot of practice sometimes. We've got these blocks to love's awareness to deal with. We've got grievances. We've got all this sort of stuff we've got to deal with that seems to be part and parcel of walking that path. But we deal with one thing and then we listen again. We deal with another thing and then we listen again. And it's daily. It's like St. John. Is it John? Tina? I die daily. The evil of each day is sufficient or something or other. I think it was John, the disciple John. It's no, yeah?
I think you're right, yeah. John's the one that
it's no,
Mary loved. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Mary loved John? I thought Jesus loved John more.
No, yeah, but Jesus
The
gave
beloved
John to
disciple
Mary.
of John.
Mary loved John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is your son now, mother. Yeah, I remember that bit. Oh, that brings a shiver up my spine when I like, damn.
Right?
That's a total doneness point, you know, like, wow. This is your son now. Breaking free of the nature of time as a way of seeing oneself, as a way of being is, you know, it's like, man, everything I think is rooted in time. Every concept I hold, every belief I have, every idea that crosses my mind is all rooted in time. Learning to break free of using that time-based thinking rather than spirit guidance. Like, it takes this constancy of remembering, this constancy of making a devotional stance, I guess. Like, damn it, today I'm going to start again. I saw that I missed an opportunity yesterday, or I slipped up there because why? I wasn't focused on spirit. If I'm focused on spirit, right, if my mind is totally abiding in the spirit, I can't put a foot out of place. I can't repeat a lesson, because all my lessons are for the purpose of me learning to abide in spirit. I abide in God. I am one with all things. As above, so below. And that state on the earth, you know, that awakened mind state where Adi Dar Samaranch called it the man-God state. It's something that it eventually does become stable, and I've seen glimpses of it in myself. I've seen, and you can only really reference it in yourself, but I've seen transcendent, I guess, moments in my own mind in relationship to worldly things and events and thoughts and situations. And I'm like, wow, instantly falling back into the observance of it and out of the state. But still, at one time in my dream life, I would have never thought that possible. The concept wouldn't have even entered my thinking. It's something that was completely alien and foreign to me in its nature. And now I look at it, it's like, wow, I'm having moments of this, I'm having experiences of this, and this tends to be something that I'm carrying with me, and being aware that it has a use in moments where I'm vulnerable, defenseless, and in the face of what seems to be tempting me to believe that I'm this body, which, seen rightly, is everything in the world. The whole world is designed to validate the body. The body is the symbol of the world, symbol of separation. So, but you can't sit there 24 hours a day. It's almost impossible to stay in that place unless you were to, and I know plenty of people have tried. There's been plenty of people that have tried to meditate for days on end, and you do have to sit in meditation. As soon as you open your eyes and walk around, the mind automatically goes to analysis of what it thinks it's seeing in order to be able to even walk around, taking you out of that state. So the meditative state becomes the only one in which you can really truly stay in that sense of I am, and hopefully experience the direct entry into the Godhead from there. So in doing these lessons, it's going to be fun. These last 5 lessons especially, and we'll probably run through, Tina, you were saying you wanted to do something different. So we'll probably run through a mantra meditation before we do the final 5. I think that would be fun. I don't have any beads, but you can count off on your beads.
That sounds
Your
good.
snails. Yeah, I think so. I've always found mantra style meditations helpful, like especially when the mind seems to be busy. If you're concerned about something or playing over and over and over, it's like lesson 10 is that same sort of thing, but in a different structure. It's sort of like, this thought doesn't mean anything, that thought doesn't mean anything. And each bead in that sense has a different value because you're looking at all the things that disturb your peace of mind. But it's the same kind of mantra. And then entering into that silent meditative state of a pure posture of listening or openness. Everything sort of works together. Your dad's from Cyprus, Megan. It's beautiful there. Lots of olive trees, very, very centuries old, some of them, aren't they? Some of those olive trees.
Yes, I believe so. So I'm not overly familiar with my paternal side. School of Hard Knocks. So,
Yeah.
So, I mean, we did get to meet, so we were in contact for a couple of years. So I learned, a little bit about the culture. And when I was in care, the system had to get a hold of him. So he actually had sent me, probably my favorite thing was a book of Greek mythology. So getting to learn about yeah, that stuff was really cool. And so yeah. But yeah, he's born in Cyprus, but he lives in Toronto, and my grandparents live in Athens, along with my auntie, or an aunt out there, I should say. Out there.
I have some nice memories of Athens. Athens was lovely. Parts of it was lovely. I always loved like Greece is the home of philosophy, really. Socrates and Diogenes, all those sorts of guys, all those guys that end in e's. You can feel it, like you can feel it when you walk around Athens. You know, there's parts of the old parts of Athens where you can walk around and you can imagine guys in robes like debating their philosophies openly in public because they were encouraged to do so, and that was the nature of home place of democracy, actually, I think, Athens.
Yeah, it's like it just permeated, that way of life just permeated, and the energy just kind of remains. Yeah.
It kind of does remain, you know. There's like a marker there or something. It's like, it's a shame that way of life doesn't extend to today any more than like a classroom in an educational establishment, you know. Buddhism has a lot of similarity to that, in that novice monks are encouraged to argue with each other or to challenge each other with their conceptual understandings of the scriptures and stuff like that. And some of the monasteries have, I don't know about in Asian Buddhism so much, or sub-Asian Buddhism like down here, but in some monasteries there is time specifically set aside where students have to do these debates and have to confront each other, and it's like playing chess. You know, eventually you get to a point where you go checkmate, and everybody laughs because there's no such thing as checkmate. But you get to a point where you can't go any further, which is the whole point of the thing, I think. You know. Greece. The funny that like everything having its polar opposite in duality, you know, like in ancient Greece, also they had a very philosophical side. I mean, from our point of view of looking at what we know of history, they had a philosophical side, I should say that way. But they also had a very physical side as well. If you had a weak body in Greece, you were considered not blessed by the gods. You know, you were always encouraged to build up your body and your physical presence, but to become muscular and athletic and all of these things. And a muscular body was considered to be a beautiful body and a sign of great blessing by the gods. So everything's got its opposite here.
It does.
It's
and
funny.
even like,
It's funny.
yeah, and even like the humans' like solution to things like equality and stuff, like equal rights always seems to be about bringing the other guy down first before it's equal. We'll make them both feel like crap, and then everyone feels like crap, and it's okay. Like, whatever. Yeah, it's a crazy place.
You can see it, though. You can see the nature of mind trying to work itself out. I mean, you've only got to look at the social landscape these days, and everybody's trying to work out what they are, where they fit in. Identity-based culture movement is everywhere at the moment, and like that'll get replaced by the next thing and the next thing. What was it before then? Muslims are going to kill us or something, or you know, like we're going to be invaded by Muslims, and now it's gender and identity, and there's always something, there's always a thing. But when you see it, it's like it's just mind waking up, but in the form, it's chaotic. in the form, it has no particular grace about it whatsoever. It just seems to be this maelstrom of things going on. And you look at we were talking last night, Garrett and I, about the LBTG or something or other, and now they've put a plus symbol on the end, right? So, and the plus symbol, and his friend in Ireland was his friend or was it? Anyway, somebody was talking about how ridiculous putting the plus sign is, because eventually you're just going to add so many variants to the LGB whatever thing under the auspices of that plus that you're going to have to come all the way around to just include people that don't see themselves as any of that kind of divergent sort of identity stuff, you know, like, so it's a whole thing again. Yeah, Tina got it. It's the whole thing. So it's like, just, you know, we should put a minus at that end and a plus at that end, and then boom, you know, and that's time and space. There it is. But then of course nobody's special. You know, the whole idea of the LBG thing is to be special. I'm special. Look at me. I'm different from you. I'm not like you. And the identity, of course, struggles under that because everything's always changing. So there's always has to be this reassessment of the identity, which is why so many people now who are having these operations and things to enforce their identity beliefs are regretting it. And the suicide rate goes up, and it's just like, you know, you look into the world and it's like, well, there's never going to be a solution there. There's never going to be a solution there. You're looking for your identity, but it's never going to be your true identity because you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking out there amongst the physical landscape rather than the internal orientation that would tell you that it doesn't matter how many pluses or minuses you put on the end. None of those things are ever going to be the truth of you. You know, it's like wearing a fancy dress costume at Halloween. You can put on whatever you want. Doesn't matter. It's still not you. Even if you don't wear a costume, it's still not you. It's a funny thing. Full circle. Everything comes full circle. Play the piano. No lessons. Full circle. Try to interface with it, though. Trying to, if you see it as a program, if you see it as an energy, all you can do is accept it as it is. You can't really, I mean, we can talk about it openly in a forum like this, and we can back and forth it and have a laugh at it, or see our place within it, or whatever. You know, we can identify our falsity in it, or we can use it to establish a pathway to our truth. But if you try to interface with it or change it or make it into something or offer any kind of counsel towards it or anything, it's always going to be rejected because it's something that exists already in the past. It's already happened and it's already according to a script. It's like going up on stage during a performance of Romeo and Juliet and going up there and, let me have a look at that script. I might just make some changes. They're not going to make the changes because those changes are going to affect everybody's script. All you can do is either walk off the stage or carry on as it was intended, you know, which is where that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. That's where that comes from. You can't change anyone but yourself. So trying to get the world to see reason. This is like why proselytization fails, you know, where people go out. What are those guys, the evangelists, and we have to change the world and we have to bring heaven on earth, and that's never going to work. It doesn't matter how you insert yourself or into what cause or what social movement you put yourself into. It's never going to work because that's always in the process of change. And you're attempting to put a fixed point of view into a certain integer in time and space, which is never constant, never stable, and can't accept what you're saying anyway because it's in flux. You know, it's not open to change. It's a closed circuit, a closed loop. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job of talking about that, but it's why Jesus says, don't correct your brothers and don't even doubt them, and don't try to tell them they're wrong or anything like that, all those sorts of things. It's like they're not in a Zoom meeting. They're not in the admission of the nature of healing. They're not open to it. They're part of an old world, an old script. Don't cast your pearls before swine. You know, those who need to hear this, they'll find you and they'll be able to hear it of you and make changes in their own script accordingly. But it's like at some point the idea, and Ted used to talk about it, is as you have to kind of teach the correction as if they've worked it out for themselves, you know, as if the person that you're offering it to thinks that they, you know, if you were to say, oh, Dave told me this, so I'm going to take it on board or whatever, that's never going to last very long. But if you think you worked it out for yourself, then you're going to be like, wow, cool. I saw that. I can do that. And, you know, so it's like you get led to the point where you make your own decision. All I can do is try to represent that, hopefully reasonably, the alternative for wanting to be able to make a decision about something. I'm telling you, it's already accomplished. There's nothing that you can cross-reference in your own thinking that's ever going to be like it at all. Which brings us back to Fran's incredible teaching. You can't work it out. You just can't work it out. It's a miracle. And the miracle is the present nature of communication. That's it. Miracle-mindedness, miracle-mindedness, miracle-mindedness. Learning to become miracle-minded. Yes, wow, and thank you. It keeps it really simple to stay there. Yes, wow, and thank you. 2 and 2 equals 7. Yep, sure does. Why? Here, Fran, ready? Why would you react at all to figures in a dream if you truly knew you were dreaming? That's one I got this morning. I think I even made a post about it. Oh, no, I deleted it. I went through a process this morning of writing down about 10 posts and deleting them all. I'm just like, nah. It's funny. It's just funny stuff. I'm always doing this. Nah.
You did a new video, yeah?
I did, and you know what? I wasn't really even happy with it. I wasn't kind of like, oh yeah, that was a good video. Sometimes it's like I felt like I'm just making a video so I could hear my own voice.
Maybe. Been listening to it.
It's like, yeah, I don't even know if this stuff's helpful anymore. You know, it's like it's been helpful. I can put it this way: it's been helpful to me to bring me to a certain point of maybe maturity. I don't know if that's the right word, but a certain point of accomplishment or something. I don't know the word I'm looking for there.
Freedom.
It's been incredibly helpful for that. You know, it's like Jesus says you have to teach this course to learn it. And I've always taken that on board in a reasonably formal sense, like doing videos and these Zoom meetings, and in the earlier days, traveling the country and doing workshops, putting on seminars and different things. And the funny thing, I was looking, actually, that was one of the posts I wrote and deleted this morning. When I was sitting with Ted all those years ago, and I asked, you know, I think it was about 2 or 3 years into it, I sort of directed my mind to the ceiling, to higher authority, and I asked, how long am I going to have to sit here with Ted, listening to all his teachings every day? How long is this going to have to go on for? And I had this vision, this bar graph. You know what a bar graph is? We have all the different colored bars that go up from the bottom, and it's like they give you a sense of whatever, and then there's a line that goes across and you find that point. But I had a bar graph come up, and there was 3 sections, 3 specific sections in it, and it was like floating in midair, as if it was a translucent picture, a transparency or something, just for a second. And there was 3 years, and then there was another period of years. The 3 years was in yellow. Then there was another period of years in red, and then there was another period of years in green. And I didn't know what each period of those years represented, but all up, the totality of the years represented was 26 years. Right? Now, the first one was 3 years. I know that, right? It was 3 years that I was sitting with Ted full time before I was allowed to leave the center. And then after 3 years, I would go out and come back, and I would start putting on workshops just locally around and doing stuff and coming back. And when I was back, I would always be sitting with Ted again. And that went on for 6 years. So I don't know if the next period went for 6 years, you know, to the total of 6 years. But anyway, 26 years is this year. So this is the 26th year according to that chart. And then I don't know what after that. I don't care what after that. But when I'm trying to make those videos or thinking about doing those videos, they seem to have the hallmarks of being a very old energy, something that I'm now going out of, or you know, like it feels done. You go through stages in your transformation where something feels done. You know, it's like even when you go to yoga or you do a meditation or you do something and you've been doing it for a while and you're like, no, I think something else. I need something new. You know, this one feels done for me, and you go to the next thing. The whole thing for me feels done. You know, and I don't know how to talk about that, but time and space as a participation feels done. But I've only realized that and only beginning to recognize that in recent months, probably the last 3 or 4 months, through trying to do those videos. They just don't come naturally anymore. There seems to be almost as if, like when you get to the end of a fictional book and you kind of know how it's going to end, you know, like it's, you know, you're nearly at the end of the book. And that's how it is. And I tried this morning to write about, and of course it's going to be that way because I'm just looking at my own awakening, my own process, and putting it out there. And whatever that is, whatever that comes across as, gets picked up by anyone else and becomes a part of their own process, you know, until finally you're done with processing and there's an abiding acceptance of, well, I am that God mind, you know, experiencing through the avatar the nature of the awakening process. And whatever's next, I don't know.
That feeling that came up this morning, yeah?
Right, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes you kind of know what's next. You know, you'll have invitations or there'll be an open door and someone will say to you, come and do this and try that and whatever. And you're like, all right, I'm going to go and do that, you know, and you know that there's things ahead of you that you have an interest in or that seem to attract you. But yeah, I don't have that anymore. So, which is kind of just because we're nearly at the end of the workbook. And how many years has it taken me, you know, for the video? I needed you guys to help me get through that.
Help a brother.
Oh, I just got a message from Bernadette. I think she wanted to be here today. It's funny, every time you reach out, I'm neck deep in misery, trying to deny my greatness, insisting I'm this piece of shit tangled up in this dream of mine. I truly hate being in this state of mind. Thanks for the message. I will utilize the mantra type of meditation. Love you. There you go. So, funny. I was going to say to you, Tina, maybe you can reach out to Bernadette. I know you guys are close and you do other things online together. And
yeah, we reached out, sort of, back and forth.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, last couple of days. Because I was
came in for me this morning. Yeah, I was sitting there this morning quietly, and I just got like get in touch with Bernadette. So that was that. Anyway, That's about any questions? Joe, you're good? Oh, Tina, Joe was asking me about do we have a midweek Zoom? Do you guys still do workbook stuff midweek or anything?
Yeah, Anna's been facilitating. It's been sort of spontaneous whenever. Anna's done a couple of things, and she's doing manual for teacher. Is that what the new thing, or is that spontaneous as well? Like when?
I love
Yeah,
Anna.
it's not going to be like same day every week. It's just going to be kind of when it can be fit in, kind of keeping it more spontaneous. But yeah, tomorrow we're actually doing meditation with teacher's manual to follow at 4. But if you look in the group, there's the link and everything and the date full for the time converter.
Can you add Joe to the group? Is that
Yeah,
the
Joe's
same?
in the group. Yeah, Joe's in the group.
Oh, Joe's in the group? Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only one not in the group. How am I not in the group?
Because you showed up the last time. You showed out the last time. Blocking people and
Oh, yeah. No, well, that's, that comes under the annex of don't cast your pearls before swine.
yeah.
You get those ones, like you get given every opportunity to walk with Jesus, like literally all the teachings that he has, don't cast your pearls before swine. You'll get given the opportunity to step into those shoes where you realize that that's what you're doing. It's like, man, I'm just offering this again and again and again to someone who doesn't want it. And you got to look at that as your own idea of where is it in my own mind? I don't want to hear what I'm offering here. Or, I don't want this. So
yeah,
at least I'm not casting people into a herd of pigs and sending them over a cliff. Those days are...
We were silenced. We were silenced in that group.
I was silenced in that.
No,
you
were. You were. I couldn't say anything. Nobody could say anything. It's like, and I was responsible.
What? So now you're all discussing shit in that group?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. But I'm just looking at it like it's my own mind and just.
Right. The only real reason for that was because those links for the Zooms, every time people would discuss them, they would get further away from the current thing. And then you could never find them. It's like you have to scroll back like 5 miles of people talking about meaningless the thing you're actually...
You know what, too? You gave it to everyone, though. You added everyone on your group. You added everyone to the Facebook. So now it's like people that come to the meetings. Yeah, you just like, everybody come on into this chat room. And so they were like...
Oh, yeah, initially.
People,
yeah.
So now it's like people that actually come to the meetings added to the chat room. I don't really, So then,
Yeah.
My mind is a little bit more... The people
Do we have
that
any
want
Greek
this are
people
here.
in there? Do we have Greek people in our chat room?
Not even Megan.
Really? She's only half Greek. Megan, do you have muscles? Do you have like big muscles? Are you a muscle woman?
No, actually,
Really? That Greek lineage?
My son, my
disappointment.
son does, so.
You're a disappointment to the culture.
What culture?
That's why you ended up in salvation.
Do you belly dance?
Yeah, no, I don't do any of that. Actually, it's really funny.
People belly dance.
Yeah, I wasn't really given any one thing to identify with. It's such a mixture or whatever, and I think it's kind of a theme in my general life walk. Is just given all these things where I never seem to be able to settle into any one specific thing, which I think is
right.
A spiritual person would say that is a blessing, and actually it is. Like, because there was a lot of stuff that was really cool that I was exposed to, like all the mainstream religions except the East, and including atheism and science. I'm terming those religion.
Yeah.
And it's like it's all one little piece of an overall picture, and they're all getting mad at each other for saying the same thing different. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, no.
Well, there's actually a lot of good, juicy stuff in that, right, that you can use for salvation. So because identity is based in the form, in the physical nature of things, we carry a residual memory of every idea of lineage in our cellular makeup, right? So the body, this body, this avatar that I get to use for this time around is a hopefully an improved version on the last one, as the idea of evolution. You know, we're always learning to become more evolved or more in the physical nature of things, more masterful of our environment and everything. So you would find that in your lineage, right, there would be cellular memory that you would have of Greek culture and stuff like that. And I think it goes back about 3 or 4 generations. Jesus talks about it in the Bible as the sins of the father are visited on 3 generations or 4 generations or something, which means that the residual memory or the active memory of that, if you want to call it karma, the cause and effect nature of the manifestation of sin, which is what the body is, gets carried down. You know, the sins of the father, blah, 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 blah. And I remember my friend Josie, she was right up on all that sort of side of spirituality, where she could tell you, she would go back and she'd go, oh, you have a genetic lineage going back to somebody, and it would always be a few generations. And you would be able to stand in that energy. You know, you would be able to sort of look at that and go, how do I feel about that? And you would actually be able to find a kind of conscious sense of it, even though you weren't aware of it at the time, you know, like a big marker point in history, say, you know, like I don't really have a reference for anything in Greek culture. We would have to go back like many generations to get right back to what I'm aware of as far as Greek culture, which is back in the days of the philosophers and the death of Socrates and stuff. But if you went back 3 or 4 generations in Greek history, let's say, you'd probably find there was some big events going on there at the time. And you could probably tune into those because you would have this kind of cellular memory of them. And you would be able to use that as a catalyst for transformation. You know, a lot of stuff that happens in history is often dragged up into present day awareness, you know, like all the injustices. People love to dwell on injustice and rather than on the greatness of things that happened in history as markers for human achievement, you know, and which I think is very sad, because a lot of beautiful things have happened in history that we tend to forget about too much in favor of dwelling on righting the wrongs of the past, as if that's somehow going to change human nature now. And it's not, because human nature is human nature and you cannot change it, you know, not without a miracle. So, but that idea where you think that you have these marker points for references and they don't seem to apply to you, I bet if you were to sit there with them for a moment and really allow those things to be part of your identity, albeit false, right? It's all illusion. It doesn't really matter. But you would probably find that you do have some kind of connection.
Probably. I noticed right now, like one thing.
Yeah, go on.
One thing that seems to be coming up for me, because it's going back, and I don't know if it's baby steps for my mind or something, but you know how Jesus says, become ye like little children? Right. So I have these really early childhood memories coming to me of late. Like they just kind of gently come up and knock me in the side of the head and go away and come back later. It's not now. They come up, but there's not a specific event. There's not even anything special going on. Like one is me walking with my uncle and his girlfriend down the street. Now there's nothing going on as far as events that is significant about that. But there's a way, I think it was the age, and there's something I knew, the way of being. There was something there in my mind. Yeah. And it's like, it's in that memory, and it's kind of like
loveliness.
It's like,
it's loveliness. Think about it. It's the loveliness of childhood, right? You can't appreciate it as a child. I think it was Oscar Wilde said that youth is wasted on the young. But as an adult, you look back on it and you go, oh my God, that was so beautiful. And you can see it even in children today, how innocent right? That before the ego kicks in at the age of 8 or about that time. And you see those children are just in the present, and you do have an association with that yourself. You know, occasionally you get a glimpse of it and it's just like, oh man. And it's heartwarming. It's beautiful. It's so lovely. And you just want to, you know.
Well, and it's funny because you say then when the ego takes over, because the other memory is my mother's playing baseball. I'm in a skate park on a ramp, and I made a decision there. I don't know what it was, but somehow I feel like I forgot something there. So it'll kind of just come back around, and I try not to get too worked up about it because it's pointless. You know, just try to observe and just kind of feel into what it's trying to tell me, you know, not think into it, feel into it. That's
yes, feel. Yeah.
Which is what I'm trying to yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you find those happy thoughts and things like that, you know, in those moments, and you try to feel into them, it's like that feeling, it's like there's a vibration. Everything is energy, everything is communication and information, right? So if you can imagine that the conscious level is information that has been muddled up like alphabet soup, and somewhere there is still that pure signal of communication that's going on above that in the higher level, and you can feel it. You can't tap into it because you're completely preoccupied with the alphabet soup. The mind's always trying to look at the alphabet soup and see if it makes a word. You know, and put 2 letters together and 3 letters together and try to make some kind of conscious association with that as an idea of what it thinks is being communicated. But when you feel into it, you're feeling into something that Jesus talks about it as the call to awaken, the call for God. You know, we scramble it somewhat. We scramble it up, and it's like we get these impulses, which we've been talking about in the last few Zooms, I think we've been doing. We have these impulses and these feelings. We feel something inside and we can't put our finger on it. And so we try to make something up that suits what we think the impulse is about. And we go, what do I feel this impulse about? You know, what is this? Am I hungry? Do I want sex? Is there some kind of possession I need to buy or whatever? And we look for a solution automatically, because the ego always speaks first, on the physical layer, rather than just allowing it to be, no, hang on, I've got an impulse. I've got a feeling. I'm just going to sit with that feeling of that impulse, and I'm going to let it reveal itself to me rather than me decide what I think it's for. And that's probably where you're going with that. I mean, it would have to be, because everything is of God, right? Seen rightly, everything is of God. Everything is always calling for your awakening. You're always sustained by the love of God, whether you're listening to the ego voice, which muddles that communication up, or whether you're starting to have glimpses or holy instants of recognition wherein you realize that there's a true communication going on, and you're starting to realize that somehow you're a part of that, and that if you don't fall back into the analysis of what you think that is, it'll continue, or your awareness of it will continue. But that's, for me anyway, that's the hardest part, is like you get a moment of light or a moment of true communication or a feeling, and you're like, oh, what was that? And you immediately fall into the analysis mode, the judgment mode. What was that? And as soon as you do that, you're out of the mode that brought you to that sense of being aware of the feeling in the first place. It's like you've switched minds. Instead of in the state of being, you're in a state of analysis.
Yeah. Oh man.
Right. I know, right? I know. It's true. It's this little tiny thing. So it's like musicians, right? You're like this because you're a musician. It's like musicians, you know, when they get together and they're just jamming and stuff, and all of a sudden they'll all hit this sync. They'll all be like, hey, what was that? We just did something. What was that? You know, we just hit this whole thing going on. We're just goofing around and boom, boom, boom. That sounded great. And there was this feeling that went with it. You just know it. And I think in the music industry, they say that was tight, man, you know, and stuff like that, whatever it was tight, or that was a thing, you know.
Yes.
Now, the thing that stops that being a thing was somebody said, hey, what was that? We just did something. If you hadn't had that analysis mode cut in there, you would have all just kept on with that whole thing, and it would have just flowed as this, you know, beautiful piece of music.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, because music is like a modality of spirituality for me because it's like, so I met this enthusiastic person. I thought, because I'm having judgments about myself as an artist, I thought, to better myself as an artist or singer, I need to understand. So I'm sure you guys can hear all the ego in there already.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I need to understand theoretical composition. Oh my God, so many triggers, so many triggers. I was like, this is too academic. Holy crap. And now I'm in this group of people, of her students that she's deemed gifted, that she wants to go into this creative studio space with, where, okay, I've met this really cool producer, blah, blah, blah. But now I have all this frenetic energy. I'm starting to get judgments. I'm starting to get doubts because instead of just doing what I do and feel the experience, I had to go and judge myself and try to do it different and what is not natural to me. And it's really killing my vibe. And so luckily though, I have this producer who's a little in tune, and is like, he just reaches out. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I would like to say yes, but no, I'm not okay." like there's too much frenetic energy here. And, and he's like, but it's like, there's stuff where it's like I gotta listen to find my people. It's like, okay, this person, while she's very knowledgeable and everything, it doesn't feel right to have them on this project. And I have to follow that because this song has potential. It's called Camellia Crow. It came from a transcendent moment. And so now I have to just put it out there and I gotta wait for people to come to me. So this producer is actually one of them. And we just had a conversation. He just kind of tentatively reached out and was like, "What's your process?" I'm like, "How about I just play you the song from start to finish? You tell me what you hear, and we'll go from there." He's like, "That's a perfect process. I absolutely agree with that approach." And it's funny because I had a whole bunch of fear though about just saying that, and being having integrity about my own process for creating, you know. So yeah, it's interesting how things come up to show you how and where and why you need to work on yourself. um, but yeah, so but it's cool being able to go into this space and encourage someone to create with me by feeling rather than no. I told him, I'm like, look, I don't know music, and y'all are just gonna have to accept that I don't know music. I feel music. That's it. So yeah, and so take it from there, right? But it's learning to speak my truth, learning to use that and speak what's on my heart, and not fear the consequences of not knowing, and being okay with not knowing, and just trusting.
It's good that you can take that on, It's good that you can take on that guidance and the directorship of that producer without losing your creative process, because a lot of artists do. A lot of artists get caught up in the mechanism of being produced and being professional, or being something that somebody already has a predetermined outcome of what should occur. Have you ever seen the movie of Queen, like Bohemian Rhapsody? I think the ads. Where they're in the producer's office, right? They're sitting there. The whole band is sitting in the producer's office, and they've got Bohemian Rhapsody, the song, and it's 7 minutes or something. And the guy's like, "We have to shorten this to 3 minutes because the people just won't understand a 7-minute song," or whatever. And rather than sacrifice their creative integrity and everything else about it, they told him to go stuff himself, and threw a rock through his window. And they walked out into the unknown, and was picked up by another producer who actually totally loved their vibe, and he felt where they were coming from, and he just produced it as it was, and it was one of the world's biggest hits,
Yeah, so that's what I like. Like this guy could hear stuff that I did without me telling him, and it's like, you're a person on this project, like, So yeah, and
it's a collaborative venture,
Totally.
When you accept that, it'll automatically come around for you. It's like, it's not about a Megan, and it's not about the music. It's about the collaborative venture itself. It's about that whole journey from knowing that you've got something to give, and the process of allowing that to come out as it's meant to come out, And the hard part about it is like the whole transition, like you said, you got all these triggers. It's like all of those triggers are the opportunity to allow that to come out as it's meant to come out. You know, seen rightly, oh, these are the triggers I need to heal for this expression to be able to get past my ego and to be presented to the world as a living message of my truth, my creative expression. You know, it's like that part of it's kind of beautiful. It's the same way with art. You know, my parents were in the art gallery business their whole lives pretty much, and they would have talented artists always coming into the gallery to show them their work and ask their advice on becoming like prolific, well-known artists and selling their material and stuff. And Mum used to say to me, don't ever go to art college, Dave, because you go in as a creative force and you come out as a robot to what the art world thinks will sell, you know, and you lose. And I've lost that. I've become a prostitute through tattooing and everything, which I do. I don't know how the hell I even got into that, but Jesus uses me there. So it's not about what I do. It's about where I am. But prior to that, though, I would sit in front of my canvases for weeks, perhaps working on one, and allow what was within me to be presented out there on the canvas, you know, and people would always look at it and be like, half of the people that would see them would be like, dude, there's something seriously wrong with you, or they would be like, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, I wrote a song.
It'll be one of the either they or they wouldn't know what to think, you know. But in me, I was trying to get my soul out, something I felt inside. It was like there was a child inside wanting to scream and wanting to just be heard and wanting to recognize itself and wanting to see where I was at in life, you know, and all of this thing. It's like the tortured soul of the artist was there. And that was a big part of me. Now it's just like tattoos for money, but that's not the reason I'm there. You know?
Yeah, I had someone do that with the song I wrote. It was called The Piper. And in the climax of the song, because I had just started dealing with my trauma stories and stuff like this as a new mom and all this jazz. And I happened to be given the opportunity to write some music while I was on maternity leave. And I said, yeah, that was a very cathartic album, apparently. It was quite dark. But the one line in there, it was like, because I'm referring to all the memories that keep going through my head. And the line is, I keep cutting myself on shards of me. And it really, like, the song is it's so hypnotic. And then we get to that part, and that part, it explodes out of me almost violently. And when it's done, I'm showing this to my guitarist and his wife for the first time. His wife looks at me, she's like, are you okay?
Right.
Yeah, so I get it. Yeah.
You answer that question.
Right.
So no, I'm not okay. I need a miracle.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Don McLean? He wrote a beautiful song called Starry, Starry Night about Vincent van Gogh. Tina, can you cue that up?
Yeah.
For the outro?
Yeah, I thought I saw it on your page.
What's the name?
I think I actually, a while back. You got a good memory.
Mm-hmm.
Don McLean, Starry, Starry Night. We'll go out with that.
You saying Don,
We'll
D-O-N, or John?
D-O-N.
D-O-N?
Don,
Okay.
D-O-N. Like, hey, I'm the Don. Make you an account.
American Pie. The night the music
Yeah, same
died.
guy wrote American Pie.
No,
But not American Pie. Although that's a good song as well. That has
those
a
are the
deeper
songs.
foundation.
Starry, Starry Night.
Starry, Starry Night.
Jason.
And we'll sit in silent meditation listening to our brother Don as he feels an affinity with the struggling heart of the artist.
Starry, Starry Night? Is that what you want to hear?
Yep.
All right.
It's okay to cry. Try to feel this song. When you're listening to the words, try to feel the song. Don't try to understand the words, feel it. It's a heart space thing.
Starry, starry night, paint your palette blue and gray.
Close your eyes.
Out on a summer's day, with eyes that know the darkness in my soul. Shadows on the hills, sketch the trees and the daffodils. Catch the breeze and the winter chills in colors on the snowy linen land. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, and how you suffered for your sanity, how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. Starry, starry night, flaming flowers that brightly blaze, swirling clouds in violet haze, reflect in Vincent's eyes of china blue, colors changing hue. Morning fields of amber grain, weathered faces lined in pain, are soothed beneath the artist's loving hand. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now, for they could not love you. Still your love was true. And when no hope was left inside on that starry, starry night, you took your life as lovers often do. But I could have told you, Vincent, this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Starry, starry night, portraits hung in empty halls, frameless heads on nameless walls, with eyes that watch the world and can't forget, like the strangers that you've met. The ragged men in ragged clothes, the silver thorn, a bloody rose, lie crushed and broken on the virgin snow. Now I think I know what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they're not listening still. Perhaps they never will. If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. If I could make days last forever, if words could make wishes come true, I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know you're the one I want to go through time with. If I had a box just for wishes and dreams that had never come true, the box would be empty except for the memory of how they were answered by you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know that you're the one I want to go